open door gives great light if you don't have a ring light. Like it can be that simple, but get a fresh photo, right? Your head should take up about 60%. Your head should take up about 60% of that bubble, right? And here's why. And I'm not going to get a wild depth about this, but go over to the LinkedIn platform. Those of you over on Instagram, you know this well. Like I'm seeing your little bubbles right now of who's watching live. And those of you who your face takes up the large majority of the photo bubble, it creates brand awareness. I can actually see you. It's distinctive, right? If you're a tiny little dot with a large photo and it's like full body, you totally get lost in brand awareness when people are scrolling because those little bubbles follow you everywhere. So you want to make sure that bubble is distinct, it's clear. As you're looking at me right now in my office, this is a great example. If you've got a little bit darker hair, you want a lighter backdrop. You want the contrast in the bubble, right? If you're very dark skinned, you don't want to be behind a dark backdrop. If you're very light skinned, you don't want to be behind a light. You want the contrast so that you pop, right? I also am known for bright colors. Like people can be really boring on LinkedIn. There's no better way to create curiosity than to wear bright colors. It's 2024. You don't need to be in a black suit unless that's your industry and that's your vibe, right? My claim to fame in the first year of building my business to 1 million in 19 months, leveraging LinkedIn, was a bright pink jumpsuit. I wore a bright pink jumpsuit, right? And it was very professional, but it was bright pink, right? So let your personality shine so that you can be differentiated, okay? So then I want to move into the headline. Again, this is where I feel like people tend to try to cram 10 pounds of tuna in a 5-pound can and think, I have to let people know everything about me in this headline. And this is where I say less is more. Your headline is about creating curiosity. This is about luring them in. And if you try to cram everything that you do into your headline, you're going to lose impact, right? The headline is to create curiosity so that people want to do what? Go click on your profile and actually read a little bit about you. And newsflash, it takes 10 to 20 touches for any particular lead to ultimately buy anything that you're selling. So don't think that like nailing your headline with everything you do, who you serve, how you serve, what your offer is. Don't think that your headline is going to be the one touch that sells someone. The headline should create curiosity. Know that the content you create on LinkedIn is going to be the nurture. It's going to build the know, love, and trust. And then that brand recognition from a headline is going to help you stand out. And so I want to talk about that. The headline is real estate. It is major real estate. To this day, we get tons of leads based off of my headline. And because we're strategically, and this is something we're going to teach in the workshop next week. And so if you guys are just now joining us, we're going to drop a link in the chat, but we have a totally free 9-day workshop next week where we're going to go down into the weeds on this stuff and walk you through step by step. But when you're strategically engaging on LinkedIn, unlike the other platforms, see, I'm streaming live on Instagram too. And so I have this perspective, right? All you can see are people's like their title, right? Whatever their label is on Instagram, which gives me no information, right? When I'm over on LinkedIn, your headline follows you everywhere. And this is a key differentiator beyond the fact that also LinkedIn is undersaturated and visibility is exponentially higher than the other platforms, but that's a whole nother conversation. But your headline, if you nail it, it in itself can be a lead magnet. It in itself can be attraction marketing because you're speaking in a language with real estate where if you're strategically engaging on the platform, people see that headline and they're like, oh, she's a fractional CFO. I want to check that out. I've been looking for one. Or, oh, this person's, you name it, right? And also, this brings me to my next thing is don't just say fractional CFO, right? Like, because if you're in the fractional space, no matter what your work is, like, don't just give your headline your title, right? We want to include in our headline. And this is where it can get a little bit fun and can confuse people sometimes because I just told you, don't try to put everything in there, right? But I also want you to speak to the transformation your ideal client or customer is going to experience, or at least create mass curiosity. Where people get it wrong is they come from corporate America, they've had a corporate job, now they're an entrepreneur, they come back to LinkedIn because they know the goodness of an undersaturated platform and mass visibility, but they show up like an employee. And what do I mean by that? They're a business owner now, not an employee, but they're showboating, podcaster, keynote speaker, author. They're displaying all their features of being successful, just like an employee does. That is a fatal mistake that entrepreneurs, especially newer entrepreneurs or even wildly successful entrepreneurs, make over on LinkedIn, is they're leading in their headline with showboating like an employee, like they're trying to land a job instead of land a client. Because what do we know if we're trying to land a client? We want to speak to the transformation that they can experience, or at least create mass curiosity through the headline that you put in, right? So for instance, corporate dropout, right? To this day, I have used corporate dropout since the day I left corporate, and it continues to bring me leads of people who are making a radical pivot in the professional space to launch businesses in the online space. Why? Because my headline speaks to it, right? It's like, and it creates curiosity. Now, you can't gather just from my headline that I left corporate, went into the digital space, launched multiple companies, and became a multiple seven-figure business owner. You can't get all of that out of my headline, but I've already created curiosity by the headline because they're saying, she's exited corporate. I'm curious. And then they go to the profile, they start following my content, right? And then they're sold in because you gain the know, love, trust factor. So your headline is extremely valuable. So I'll give you an example. So for me now, we've kind of played with it. It's corporate dropout turned digital CEO, teaching business owners no fluff, burnout proof growth strategies. Now, do you see how nowhere in my headline am I saying, multiple seven-figure business owner, 3-time best-selling author? Nobody gives a shit until they know that you can create the transformation they desire. Now, that's the complete opposite of Instagram. Now, it's funny because if you're over on Instagram and you're looking at my profile, we're marketing to the flashy, showy, look at all my fancy stuff and things and how successful I am, because that's the way that platform behaves, which, by the way, is not my favorite place to be. I actually love the authenticity and the direct connections and the no fluff over on LinkedIn, right? Where we're really speaking to how we can network with each other and how we can support each other and how we can drive a change, right? For the people that we support. Okay. So let me give you all a little Mad Lib to play with in your headline. You can craft, if you're like, how do I get started on headline on LinkedIn? Here's what you can do. You can craft an I help statement to get started, right? So you can write down I help, right? And then shorten it for the first part of your headline. I help X with X so they can get X. So I'm going to write this down one more time. I help, and then fill in the blank. Who do you help? What's your demographic? Right? So like for me, I help business owners. Who do you help? Right? I help, right? With, what do you help them with? What problems do you solve? And then so that, right, they can, what's the result? What's the transformation? Right? And the more niche you can get, the better. Like we have a client, I have a million examples, but one that works specifically with women of color of high net worth. We call that niche AF. That is niche as it gets, right? Don't be afraid to get super niche, because then your client or your ideal client is like jumping out of the screen at your headline being like, oh my God, like they work with people just like me, right? Okay. So that's a little bit about your headline. Fourth little nugget for today is going to be customizing your link in your profile. Some of you guys are not aware there is a custom button on LinkedIn on your profile where you can select this button. You have to choose to display it. So if you go to my profile on LinkedIn right now, you'll see there's these really cool hyperlinks like right on my profile. It's a little bit like the bio link on Instagram, right? If you go up top to the feed, to my profile, there's a little button you can click and it takes you to something, right? LinkedIn's doing the same thing, right? You just have to customize it, and a lot of people don't know how to, right? And so like right now, if you go to my profile, it's a hyperlink driving traffic to our masterclass next week, right? Now, when we're done with our masterclass in 9 days, we'll pull that link down, we'll pull down the banner, we'll put our regular branded banner up, and we'll put a link driving you to my website, right? Because then we're going to be shifting gears and looking at promoting our mastermind, because we only open the doors to that once a year, right? So we're going to shift kind of our branding altogether and what's on that link. Okay. So this is just a really cool feature that a lot of people are not aware of. Speaking of hyperlinks, there's another great feature on your profile. And that is when you scroll down a little bit further on LinkedIn on your profile, there's a featured section. Now, if you don't have the featured section, you do, you just haven't updated in your settings that you want to use the featured section. Why is the featured section amazing? Well, first of all, I take you back to what is the #1 visited website in the world? What's the number 23 visited website in the world? It's LinkedIn, right? So your business and your name are highly visible on Google. And the moment they go to Google and it takes them to LinkedIn, LinkedIn is, for all intents and purposes, a sit-in website for you. Because with the featured sections, these are all hyperlinks that you can put in whatever order you want to drive traffic to different places. It's really no different than a link tree that you see in a bio on another platform, right? And the reason I love this is because even in the written form of your profile, you can ask people to grab XYZ in the featured section, right? And you can put them in order of what you're promoting, right? So again, I'll go back to next week. We're going to be hosting that totally free masterclass. And so it's like front and center on the featured section. Now, after the doors are closed and we shift to our final days of promoting our live event in Austin, Texas, and we begin to promote opening the doors to our mastermind, we'll take that information about the masterclass and pull it down, shift on the featured section to the more important things we're focused on that month, right? Does that make sense? And so you can have an artillery of things in your featured section and rearrange the order depending on the month, right, that you want to prioritize on. The other thing I love about the feature section, how many of you have a booking link, right? So you can encourage with a direct CTA, call to action, on LinkedIn in your content and your profile, you can drive traffic to that booking link. And not to get into too much of the weeds, but from an automation standpoint, with the booking link, you can even put in pre-qualifying questions so you can kind of pre-qualify those leads before you take the call. But what I find, especially on LinkedIn, visibility is huge. Activity, people are in and then they're out. They can be gone for a couple of days on LinkedIn. They're not dopamine numbing out and scrolling like they are on Instagram and Facebook. They go into LinkedIn intentionally. They do what they need to do, and then they're out. They might be out for a couple of days. And so there's this, for me, it's a law of efficiency of reducing the back and forth and lag time in the DMs. If I have a hyperlink where people can schedule immediately with pre-qualifying questions, I've saved me and the potential prospect a lot of time. And I can always look through their question, the answers to their questions. And if they're not qualified, then I can cancel the call, right? I actually had someone apply to my mastermind last week. And one of my questions is, I'm not taking calls to negotiate price. Like it's $25,000, right? And I don't want my time wasted. I am happy to get on a call with you if you're curious about what's in it, if it's the right fit for you. You know, there's a number of reasons you would have a clarity call with a client, but I am not wasting time negotiating price. And I also don't want to get on a call with someone who has massive sticker shock and was never qualified in the first place. So in that instance, with a high ticket offer, you may have in your featured section in that booking link acknowledgement of the price of the thing you're consulting about, right? So last week, it's a question. I acknowledged the price of the mastermind is $25,000, right? And they filled out all the information. And when they got to that, they said no, right? But they booked a call with me. And I'm like, that's not a good lead for me, right? And I sent it back to my sales team. And I told them, I said, hey, if y'all want to follow up with this person, That's fine. But I don't have time to take time out of my calendar as a CEO with someone who's acknowledging that they don't know that it's $25,000 when I just told them it was $25,000, right? So there's ways that you can create efficiency through using, booking in the featured section. Okay. Two more things, or one more thing in your about section, which is the summary section of LinkedIn, right? Please start not like an employee. What do employees do? They write in chronological order. So this is what it would look like for me prior to understanding the power of LinkedIn as a small business owner, right? I started out my career as a lab tech at Duke University upon graduation. And then I moved on and got my doctorate in pharmacy. And then from there, I became a medical director in the pharmaceutical industry. Blah, 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 blah. No one cares. No one cares. And some of you as business owners are doing the same thing, except in business terms. Like you're still telling your story of how you became an entrepreneur. They don't care. People care about what's in it for them. So you want to create a really nice hook in the beginning of that summary as a small business owner. Ask them a question. What happens when? Like literally speak to the scenario they are living in right now so that they're like, yes, that's me. Or ask a really insightful question. Have you ever? And then write out the problem that you know your ideal client is up against, right? But the point is lead with the hook, lead with relatability. Don't lead with showboating. Where you can learn about being a keynote speaker, a podcaster, a best-selling author, that comes later in the profile. After you've gained credibility, and I'm interested in what you have to offer because I know that you know my problems better than anyone and you have a solution to it, right? Is this making sense? And it's 2024. Yes, even on LinkedIn in the summary section, I am a huge advocate of bullets and white space. Yes, even emojis on LinkedIn as an entrepreneur. All of us, check your phone. Check your phone and tell me you have not been using emojis today somewhere, right? People are in a world of an attention span of a gnat. Make it super easy for them to read, create lots of white space in your summary section. Try to categorize things by bullet form if there's different modalities in how you work together. And the last two things I'll say as we wrap up is one great way to separate yourself from your competitors is talk about why you're different. Maybe you are a mortgage broker. Maybe you are a financial advisor. Maybe you are an executive coach, but what signature method or process makes the experience with you different, and lay it out in the summary section. And the last thing I'll say today as we wrap up is do not forget to put a call to action in your summary. Make it super simple for them to connect with you and where to submit it, right? So in the summary, you could say, head down to my featured section and book a clarity call if you're interested in XYZ, or send me a message in the DMs, or here's my email address. Like make it super seamless, right? Before they get off the summary of how they can interact with you, right? Okay, guys. So with that, that's a wrap because I actually have to jump in and do some coaching inside of my Lead Gen Academy in 3 minutes, 2 minutes now. But if you're not inside my academy and you're learning about LinkedIn and you're really, really curious and you're like, wow, this is really fascinating. I just want to remind you, if you don't know really quickly, Melissa Henault here, I was able to scale my online business to $1 million in revenue in less than 19 months. With 600 followers on Instagram, I'm looking at my Instagram group, and less than 2,000 on LinkedIn. And it was through the power of LinkedIn and the ability to be seen in a small pond as a big fish and not have so much noise. And in our 9-day masterclass next week, I am going to be walking you through the tried and true methods that I use to this day and thousands of clients have learned and are executing and getting results with me. So if you want to join our masterclass, we'll be dropping the link in the chat, and we'll also have it up in the link in the bio for Instagram. Come over and play with us next week. All right, guys, I hope you have a great afternoon. All right.